Have you ever watched a movie so terrifying that your body begged you to leave the theater? Some films don't just scare you, they crawl under your skin, twist your stomach, and make every heartbeat louder than the screams on screen. Tonight, we're diving into the darkest corners of cinema, stories so disturbing that people couldn't sit through them. From cursed houses to unspeakable experiments, these are the movies that broke even the bravest souls. So, do you think you could last till the end? 1. The Exorcist, 1973. A young girl becomes possessed by a demonic force, pushing faith and fear to their breaking point. There are horror movies, and then there's The Exorcist. The kind of film that doesn't just scare you, it stains your soul. It begins quietly, almost innocently. A mother, worried about her daughter Regan, who's been acting strangely, whispers in the attic, strange scratches on the walls. The feeling that something unseen is lurking nearby. But what starts as confusion slowly spirals into madness. As Regan's laughter turns guttural, her eyes turn hollow, and her voice becomes something not human. When Father Marin and Father Karras arrive to confront the evil within her, the air seems to freeze. The room becomes a battlefield, faith versus the abyss. You can almost feel the weight of every word, every prayer, as the demon mocks them, taunts them, plays with their sanity. The spinning head, the levitation, the unholy blasphemy, all burned into the minds of those who dared to watch. In 1973, people weren't ready. Viewers fainted, vomited, screamed for the lights to come back on. Some ran out of theaters in tears. Ambulances were called. Churches held prayer sessions for moviegoers who couldn't shake the terror. Because The Exorcist didn't just entertain, it reached inside and made you confront something primal. Something older than religion itself. The fear that evil is real. And it can find you. Even now, 50 years later, no amount of CGI or jump scares can match the dread of that cold, dimly lit bedroom, the soft flicker of candlelight, the hiss of an unseen voice, the crucifix trembling in the dark. You think you're brave? Try watching it alone, when the world outside is silent and your room is still. The Exorcist isn't just a film. It's an experience that lingers long after the credits roll. A test of endurance, a mirror showing us how fragile our courage truly is. Some people left the theater that night, others never truly left the fear behind. 2. Hereditary, 2018. A grieving family discovers a horrifying legacy that blurs the line between love, madness, and the supernatural. Some horror movies whisper their terror. Hereditary screams it through silence. It begins with a funeral, a mother's death cloaked in grief and unease. Annie Graham tries to keep her family together, but there's something fractured beneath their quiet home. Her daughter, Charlie, is odd, too quiet, too distant, her clicking tongue echoing in the dark. And when tragedy strikes, it doesn't just break them, it opens a door that should have stayed shut forever. You can feel it, can't you? That slow, suffocating dread, where the camera lingers too long, where every shadow looks alive. Director Ari Aster doesn't throw monsters at you, he lets them crawl into your head. You watch as Annie's grief mutates into hysteria, as Peter's guilt festers into terror, as unseen forces toy with them like puppets. There's no music to warn you, no safe moment to catch your breath, only the growing certainty that something ancient is orchestrating their pain. And then comes the sound, that single, sharp click. If you've seen it, you know, that moment when the audience gasped, when a collective shiver ran through every spine in the theater. People couldn't look, some cried, some walked out, not because of gore, but because Hereditary hits a part of you that few films dare to touch, the horror of losing control, of watching your family crumble under invisible hands. It's not just a story about demons, it's about inheritance, of trauma, of guilt, of darkness passed down like blood. Annie's desperate sculptures, Peter's haunted eyes, the house filled with secrets that were never meant to be understood. Every frame feels like a nightmare you can't wake from, one that twists love into something unbearable. By the time the truth reveals itself, when the masks come off and the ritual begins, it's too late. The horror isn't on the screen anymore. It's in you, in the quiet realization that maybe fate isn't something we can escape. Hereditary doesn't scare you with jumps, it dismantles you piece by piece. And when the credits roll, The silence feels heavier than before, because deep down, you know the horror never really left. 3. The Blair Witch Project, 1999. 3 film students disappear in the woods while investigating a local legend, leaving behind their terrifying footage. Before found footage became a cliché, it was a curse. The Blair Witch Project didn't need monsters, gore, or elaborate effects. It had something far more potent: the illusion that it was real. Imagine walking into a theater in 1999, not knowing if what you were about to see was fiction or fact. The shaky camera, the raw fear in their voices, the endless forest swallowing every sense of safety, it all felt too authentic. Too human. Heather, Josh, and Mike set out to make a documentary about an old legend, the Blair Witch. A ghost said to haunt the woods of Burkittsville, Maryland. But what begins as curiosity slowly curdles into terror. Their map vanishes. Their compass lies. The forest feels alive, watching, whispering, night after night. Strange sounds close in, snapping branches, distant cries, childlike laughter echoing through the dark. They're lost, but it's more than that. It's as if the forest itself won't let them leave. You can almost taste the panic, the breathless arguing, the trembling flashlight beams, the tears smeared with mud. Nothing happens, and yet everything happens. The horror isn't what you see. It's what your mind imagines in the spaces between. And that's what made people lose it. Some fled the theaters, dizzy from the camera work. Others swore they were watching real people die. There's a moment near the end, if you've seen it. You remember, when Heather's voice cracks, whispering apologies to the camera. Her nose running, eyes swollen with terror. It's not acting. It feels like confession, like she knows she's not making it out. And then that final, frozen shot of someone standing in the corner, silent, motionless. It's an image that haunted an entire generation. The Blair Witch Project didn't just scare audiences, it rewired them. It reminded us that fear doesn't need to be shown, it needs to be believed. That the unseen is always more powerful than the visible. People left theaters nauseated, shaken, and questioning reality. Because the greatest trick this film pulled wasn't the witch, it was making us believe she might still be out there, waiting in the dark, just beyond the edge of the light. 4. The Human Centipede II, 2011. A disturbed man obsessed with the first film tries to recreate its gruesome experiment, only this time. Reality is far more horrifying than fiction. You think you've seen disturbing movies before? Think again. The Human Centipede II isn't just uncomfortable, it's an assault. A brutal, stomach-churning descent into madness that dares you to keep watching. Some couldn't, many didn't, because this isn't horror that hides in the shadows, it's horror that looks you dead in the eyes and dares you to look back. Meet Martin, not a mad scientist, not a genius, just broken, a lonely, abused parking attendant who finds twisted solace in watching the Human Centipede on loop. The grainy glow of the screen is his only comfort. His only escape from a world that's already chewed him up. But obsession has a way of devouring reason. And when Martin decides to recreate the film in real life, his fantasy turns into a nightmare drenched in blood, metal, and filth. Shot entirely in stark black and white, the film feels like a descent into the mind of pure sickness. There's no score to warn you, no soft moment to breathe, only the grinding of tools, the screams muffled by duct tape, and the relentless sound of madness unfolding. Director Tom Six doesn't just push boundaries, he obliterates them, leaving behind a trail of nausea and disbelief. By the halfway point, theaters were emptying, people fainted, cried, shouted at the screen. Critics called it depraved, pointless, unwatchable, but beneath the gore lies something even more disturbing, the reflection of obsession itself. Martin is not a villain from fiction, he's the monster born from it. A reminder that horror doesn't always stay on the screen. Sometimes, it follows you home. Every frame feels wrong, every second like something you shouldn't be witnessing. And yet, you can't look away. That's the true horror of the Human Centipede II. It traps you between disgust and fascination, daring you to find where your limit truly lies. When the credits finally roll, the silence feels merciful. You'll want to look away, to cleanse your mind, to forget, but deep down, a question lingers. Why did you keep watching? Curiosity? Morbid fascination? Or something darker? Few films have tested their audiences like this one. The Human Centipede II didn't just make people leave the theater, it made them question why they ever walked in. 5. Raw, 2016. A young vegetarian's first taste of meat awakens something dark, primal, and insatiable within her. There are movies that make you jump. And then there are movies like Raw, the ones that make you squirm. That crawl beneath your skin and stay there long after the screen goes dark. This is not your typical horror. It's not about monsters, ghosts, or demons. It's about hunger, the kind you can't reason with. The kind that's buried deep inside every one of us. Justine is a shy, brilliant vegetarian starting her first year at veterinary school. Her parents, strict and cold, send her off with warnings and rules. But on her first night, she's dragged into a brutal hazing ritual, blood, filth, chaos. Amid the madness, she's forced to eat raw meat for the first time. A piece of rabbit kidney. Harmless, right? Except it isn't. Something inside her shifts. Her body rebels. Her skin itches. Her stomach twists. And then comes the craving for more. You can feel it building with every frame, that slow, burning transformation from innocence to obsession. The camera lingers on moments that feel too intimate, too human, until they turn unbearable. When Justine begins to crave flesh, not animal, but human, it's not played for shock. It's played like a confession. Her trembling lips, her wide eyes, the quiet horror of realizing that the monster isn't outside, it's her. People fainted during screenings. Ambulances were called at film festivals. Not because Raw is gratuitous, but because it's disturbingly real. The sound design, the textures, the way the light hits a piece of skin or a streak of blood, it all feels tactile. Tangible, like your own body is betraying you as you watch. But underneath the gore lies something far more profound. A story about growing up. About identity. About discovering the parts of yourself you wish didn't exist. Director Julia Ducournau doesn't scare you with what's seen. She scares you with what you understand. The moment you realize Justine's hunger isn't just physical, it's emotional. Existential. By the end, Raw leaves you hollow and haunted. You might want to look away. But you can't. Because every bite, every gasp, every drop of crimson is part of a larger truth, that beneath the surface of civility, we're all animals pretending to be human. So ask yourself, when the hunger comes, how far would you go to feed it? 6. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, 1974. A group of friends stumbles into the home of a murderous family, discovering that some nightmares wear human skin. If Raw makes your stomach churn, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre makes your soul scream. There's nothing polished about it. No glossy effects or orchestral swells, just the relentless, sunburned madness of rural Texas and the sound of a chainsaw tearing through silence. It begins like any road trip, laughter, friends, heat shimmering off the highway, until they pull over near an old farmhouse. That's when the laughter stops. You can almost feel the air grow heavy, taste the rot in the wind. The house looks abandoned at first, bones hanging from the porch. Strange furniture made of skin, but something moves inside. And then, out of nowhere, Leatherface appears, not a monster from a storybook, but a man-child in a mask of human flesh, roaring from behind a whirring chainsaw. The sound alone feels like a scream you can't shut off. The film doesn't show much blood, that's the trick. It makes your imagination do the damage. Every swing, every scream, every thud echoes in your chest like a heartbeat that won't calm down. By the time Sally, the lone survivor, is sprinting down the road, her face smeared with terror, you're not just watching her, you're running with her. You can almost hear your own breath sync with hers. When it was first released in 1974, audiences weren't ready. They didn't think a film could feel this real. Viewers fainted, others ran out mid-scene, and some theaters banned it entirely. There's something raw and documentary-like about the way it's shot, handheld, grainy, drenched in sweat, that tricks your brain into believing it's not fiction. But beyond the gore and chaos lies something deeper. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre isn't just about killing, it's about decay. The death of innocence, the rot beneath the surface of America's dream. The slaughterhouse isn't just a place, it's a metaphor for everything that devours us from within. By the end, Leatherface's dance under the burning sun, his chainsaw slashing at the air. His rage almost childlike, feels like the embodiment of pure insanity. You don't just see terror, you feel it, vibrating through your bones. Decades later, no remake has captured that same suffocating dread. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre remains one of the few films that prove horror doesn't need special effects or monsters, just the terrifying truth of what humans are capable of. So tell me, how long do you think you'd last in that house? 7. Terrifier 2, 2022. Art the Clown returns to unleash a new wave of sadistic carnage that tests even the strongest stomachs. If the Human Centipede II was too much, Terrifier 2 laughs in your face and turns the dial even higher. This isn't horror for the faint of heart, it's a full-blown endurance test. A grotesque symphony of screams, blood, and insanity led by one of the most terrifying clowns in modern cinema, Art. Not the colorful, balloon-twisting kind, but the silent kind, the one whose smile never fades even when drenched in crimson. The film opens with a whisper of calm, a false sense of safety. A teenage girl named Sienna prepares for Halloween, her costume a tribute to a fallen hero from her father's drawings. But somewhere in the shadows, Art the Clown wakes up. No words, no reason, just a hunger to create chaos, the kind of chaos that makes audiences squirm. Look away, or worse, leave. The kills are infamous. They don't cut away, they don't fade to black, they linger. Every second is a dare. The bedroom scene alone has become legend, an unholy blend of practical effects and cruelty so intense that viewers fainted during screenings. One woman reportedly vomited in the theater. And yet, the director, Damien Leone, never apologizes. He knows what he's doing, crafting a nightmare that refuses to let you breathe. But beneath the gore, there's something oddly mesmerizing. Sienna's journey, from a grieving daughter to a warrior bathed in blood, mirrors every horror fan's secret thrill, to face fear and survive it. She becomes light in the darkness, a twisted angel in a world gone mad, and Art, ever silent, becomes the embodiment of pure, meaningless evil. The camera doesn't blink, and neither should you. That's the game Terrifier 2 plays, pushing your limits until you question why you're still watching. Is it the shock, the artistry, or the unsettling realization that part of you can't look away? When the credits roll, you're left shaken, your nerves raw and your heartbeat racing. Some say the film goes too far. Others call it a masterpiece of madness. But one thing's certain, Terrifier 2 doesn't just scare, it dares. So, here's the real question. How long would you last in the dark with Art the Clown before you had to run for the exit? 8. Antichrist, 2009. A couple retreats to a remote cabin to heal from tragedy, only to confront the most terrifying parts of human nature. There are horror films that scare you, and then there's Antichrist. A film that wounds you. Directed by Lars von Trier. It's less a movie and more a fever dream. One soaked in grief, guilt, and something darker than either. It begins in silence, black and white. Snow falling. A child's laughter echoing faintly through the air. And then, tragedy. A fall, a scream. And everything changes. A husband and wife, broken by loss, escape to a cabin deep in the woods, hoping to find peace. But the forest doesn't offer peace, it breathes, whispers, moves, it feels alive. Their grief festers into something physical, something feral. Nature itself seems to mourn with them, but with a kind of cruelty that only the natural world can wield. There's a madness here, slow, creeping, intimate. The husband tries to rationalize, to treat grief like a disease he can cure, while the wife descends into a raw, primal rage. The woods become their confessional, their punishment, their hell, and what happens inside that cabin, few can stomach. Viewers fainted, others fled in disgust, critics called it obscene. Yet, Antichrist isn't horror for shock's sake, it's a confrontation, a mirror held up to pain. To the terrifying possibility that sometimes the person you love most can also be the thing you fear most. Von Trier crafts every shot with haunting precision, the sound of wind through trees, the twitch of an animal, the blood that feels too real. Every image feels like a dream you can't wake from, one that grows darker the longer you stay. It's not about demons or possessions, it's about the rot that grief leaves behind. And what happens when love curdles into something unholy? By the time it ends, you don't know whether you've watched a story or survived a ritual. You feel dirty, shaken, hollowed out, but you also feel alive, because Antichrist reminds us that horror doesn't always wear a mask. Sometimes it sleeps beside us. So, if you think you've seen everything horror has to offer, try stepping into those woods. Just don't expect to come back the same. 9. Paranormal Activity, 2007. A young couple documents the unseen presence haunting their home, until the camera captures far more than they ever expected. Sometimes, the scariest things aren't seen, they're heard. A whisper at 3 a.m., a door creaking open when it shouldn't. The soft thud of footsteps pacing the hallway when you know no one else is there. Paranormal Activity didn't need blood or monsters. It needed only the quiet dread of the everyday, and it weaponized it perfectly. Katie and Micah, an ordinary couple, decide to record the strange occurrences plaguing their suburban home. What begins as curiosity quickly becomes obsession. The handheld camera catches what their eyes can't: shadows shifting, sheets pulled by invisible hands, doors slamming shut with violent precision. Each night grows heavier, the air thicker with something that doesn't belong. You can almost feel it watching them, and you. Every flicker of movement on the grainy footage makes your heart tighten. Waiting for the inevitable, but Paranormal Activity doesn't jump at you, it waits. It builds tension until you can't breathe, then breaks you with one simple, perfectly timed horror. When the film premiered, audiences didn't just scream, they fled. Some couldn't finish it, others swore the entity followed them home. And maybe that's the genius of it. Paranormal Activity made you believe your own house could turn against you. It reminded us that fear doesn't need monsters, it just needs silence, darkness, and the feeling that something unseen is standing right behind you, waiting for you to notice. 10. The Conjuring, 2013. Paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren face their darkest haunting when a family's farmhouse becomes a gateway to evil. You know the kind of horror that crawls under your skin and refuses to leave? The Conjuring is that kind of horror. It doesn't need blood or twisted monsters. It thrives on what your imagination fills in when the lights go out. Based on the real case files of Ed and Lorraine Warren, the story follows the Perron family, who move into an old farmhouse in Rhode Island. At first, everything feels hopeful, a new beginning. But soon, their nights are broken by the sound of clapping hands in the dark, pictures falling from the walls, and doors that open themselves as if the house is breathing. What makes The Conjuring so haunting is how familiar it feels. The family isn't cursed royalty or ancient spirits, they're ordinary people like us, caught in a nightmare that refuses to end. The Warrens, seasoned demonologists, step in to help, but what they uncover goes beyond any haunting they've faced before. An entity older and more vengeful than anything they imagined lurks within the walls, feeding on fear, twisting faith, and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. There's a moment, you'll know it when it comes, when Lorraine steps into the cellar, lantern trembling, and you can feel the darkness watching her. It's not a jump scare. It's dread, pure and slow, coiling tighter with every second. When The Conjuring premiered, audiences screamed, cried, and some didn't finish it. Theaters reported people leaving mid-screening, shaken and pale. Maybe it was the realism. Maybe it was the idea that this story was true. Because deep down, The Conjuring reminds us of something we all secretly fear: that evil doesn't live in haunted mansions or faraway places. It hides in the quiet corners of our own homes, waiting for the lights to go out. Maybe you've felt it too, the pulse quickening, the breath catching, that moment when you whisper, "I can't watch this anymore." These movies didn't just scare people, they broke them. But if you made it this far, maybe you're braver than most, or maybe you just haven't met the right nightmare yet. Tell me, which of these films haunted you the longest? Drop it in the comments. And if you love walking the line between fear and fascination, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. The darkness is waiting for us in the next story.